Hello, 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 audience. Oh, yeah, there's people in the chat. Omega King, what's up, brother? OMG Godlike YOLO. That is true. That people do say that. Um, a very special guest with me, Wyatt from Roto Underground was nice enough to come on. Big shout out to him. Wyatt has definitely been someone I followed on fantasy football Twitter for a while, and someone I followed before this account even existed, and when the account had 0 followers. So it's cool that I'm doing a stream with you, man, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I'm happy to be here.
Wyatt's happy to be here. I'm happy Wyatt's here. As I was telling Wyatt backstream a little bit, as the audience knows, I'm a little new to the streaming game. So sorry if it's not as smooth. I've been told that you should just get into it, but we'll give everyone around like 37 seconds to get in here, go enter a puppy, go pour some whiskey like I believe Wyatt, our good man, is sipping on, and all those fun things. But 26 seconds, we'll dive into it. We're gonna do some DraftrPass stuff. If you follow me, you've definitely heard about that, and a lot, and I apologize that I haven't been giving my fun normal level of spreadsheets, and I've been promoting the thing I worked on. I promise some fun stuff will come back eventually when I'm out of promotion mode. Why I want Why to give some background. He's a fantasy analyst. How he got into that. He's the lead fantasy analyst now at Roto Underworld, and a lot of people that watch this aspire to work in the fantasy industry. I was playing DFS when I was 15. Watching and reading a lot of these guys, so it's something I always wanted to do. And now that people have been nice enough to grace me with an audience, I want to turn the favor. But I'll say we get into it. Wyatt, how you doing, brother?
Fantastic. It's hard to be doing poorly when you get to talk ball with someone that you like talking ball with.
We have not talked ball yet. You might find out you don't. So don't speak too soon. I might say things you disagree with.
We talk some ball on Twitter, and disagreeing is good. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing.
I do agree with that. There needs to be more respectful discourse with each other, and that's something I hope DraftrPass achieves. But Ryan, why you work in Roto Underworld? Just some background, like what got you into writing about fantasy football?
So I've been playing fantasy football for over 20 years. It's in my family. My uncle and my father have been playing for almost 40 years. So I was kind of born to do it, I guess. But because of that, fantasy football has been part of my life for so long that I've become obsessed with it. And then, like many people, when the pandemic hit, trying to find something to do with all the free time that you have now, I ended up deciding I'm gonna jump on Twitter. I'm gonna try and make content, see what happens. If anything, I'm already building projections and rankings for myself. So hey, let's see what happens with it. And I started JWB Fantasy Football with a friend of mine. And then we met Skyler, who's BFF Buffalo on Twitter. He's not as active these days, but he kind of became the third person and then eventually co-owner with me of JWB Fantasy Football. And we built that up for a while through YouTube. We hit over 3,000 subscribers. It's nothing massive or whatever, but it was nice to build a little community and just keep working, building. And then I started writing for Dynasty League football 3 years ago now. And so I've been doing that for a while. And that's to start building my writing chops. Because honestly, I think I'm a terrible writer. But people keep paying me to do it. So I guess
good ones normally think they're terrible.
So I guess I'm doing something okay. But yeah, then earlier this year, we kind of reached a natural ending point with JWB Fantasy Football. We had a lot of people kind of moving on to greener pastures. One of our big members, Tyler Roginski, started working for FTN Fantasy. Skylar wasn't a part in his life. I was somewhere, we just reached a natural ending point. So when that happened, I kind of went to Twitter and was like, hey, I'm looking for paid work in the fantasy industry. And I ended up getting hit up by Fantasy Alarm and Roto Underworld. So I started writing for Fantasy Alarm.
Commodity.
I guess. I don't know. And then Roto Underworld made me the offer to be a lead fantasy analyst for them, host some press coverage over there, which is kind of an all-encompassing show. We literally talk about every format. It's kind of just what's relevant at this time, and it's me bringing on guests and picking their mind and writing some articles over there as well. So it's been quite the journey.
That's cool to hear, man. Obviously my favorite part of that story is you just put it out there. You did things. you know, something came to an end. I was like, let me see if someone is willing to let me do something for them. And I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunities out there. You know,
Yeah.
you just got to put yourself out there. You know, that's really cool, man. So with the, like, you know, the vibe change wise, do you feel any different being a lead fantasy analyst compared to, you know, whatever we refer to it as when we first get started?
Well, honestly, it's less pressure, I would say, because, you know, co-owning JWB, I mean, we did a lot of shows. There was a lot of social work that went into that. I was kind of the quote unquote like face of JWB just because I was the more forward facing part of the ownership. So like it was on me for the most part, not like because my co-owner wasn't doing this, but because like that was part of our agreement, was that it was on me to kind of like build the brand more socially and, you know, do that. So it's a lot less pressure to just try and highlight the company that I work for now, to be like, hey, these are cool things that are happening that we're doing, instead of like feeling the pressure of like, I need this to work. I need people to see what I'm saying and people to respond well to it, you know? So it's less pressure working for someone else.
Yeah, it's definitely a different vibe when you're just making content for, like, you know, making content purposes. Whereas it's like, hey, I need to make good content because I need to make X, Y, and Z happen. And, you know, DraftrPass, you just started, but like in the same vein, it's like, oh, I need things, huh? And
Yeah.
I'm somewhat in charge of them, and it's a scary feeling at
Yeah.
times.
When you have a team like that, like you owe it to them to do your best, you know? So there's that added pressure as well. You know, you just want to help everybody. Like we were very lucky in the team that we had. I thought we had a very good team of people who were all really sharp and really cared. So it really made me want to make sure that like I got as much exposure as I could for the brand for them.
Yeah, man, and you know, it's especially between all the ad content. It's a crowded space these days. It's hard to stand out. Like I like to think, you know, the best ball angle helps a little bit. Like, you know, that content. Now there are also less consumers for it, of course, but there's a little bit more market share, a flag plant that you can put in there. Whereas, like, you know, the traditional fantasy stuff, like I have to imagine that's really hard to break into these days. And like, if it was ever easy to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is finding out what you do well and trying to, you know, leverage that for yourself. You know, when people like ask, like, how do you get into the fantasy industry or whatever, it is for the most part just start doing things, find the thing, and then find the thing that you really like, what you're passionate about, or what you think you can bring different, or find your niche and work with that.
Yeah, my angle I thought was being the guy that wore the bread mask. So
You
there's
are
unlimited
definitely, you
options.
definitely have a niche. You've cornered this market.
Yeah, whatever that market is, whatever we want to refer to it as. But when did you start getting into like the best ball streets? Like you say, you've been playing a while in the fantasy family for 40 years, back in, you know, the days when they had to write down the scores. Did you play on I want to say it was called Draft before FanDuel bought them. I do believe, like, maybe outside of MFL 10s, those were like that was the original best ball platform.
I didn't. Underdog was the first time playing best ball for me, and basically as soon as it was available in Ohio, I was in, which I think was 3 or 4 years ago. I want to say 4. I think it's 4 years ago they first available in Ohio. But I like fell in love with it instantly. And the drafting is the best part of fantasy football to me. I love Dynasty, but like I have a soft spot in my heart for seasonal leagues, because I like that they're kind of like this one individual puzzle for the year that you have to try and figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And then best ball kind of adds another layer to it because you don't have the fail safe of free agency. So it creates, you know, even more of a puzzle, I would say, at the draft. And that's why I love it so much.
Yeah, but my hot take is I'm not in love with drafting. You know, it take a while, and like, you know, that special feeling of like, I remember when I was in like 2 fantasy leagues and I couldn't wait for it to come around, and now
Yeah.
sometimes I draft 9 fantasy leagues in a day. So it's a different vibe, but in a fun way. And you know, I'm from the traditional like fantasy background. Like, have you noticed any more players coming in over from there? Because I like to think there's still a lot of like, still a big potential audience for best ball that has been untapped yet. The fantasy football community is huge.
Yeah, I think the best ball community is like minuscule compared to the entire fantasy football community. Like there are so many people who play just like regular redraft, and you tell them what best ball is, and they're just like confused. They're like, wait, so like you don't get to like change your team at all afterwards? Like people don't even know what it is yet. Even the people who are like starting to find it, they draft like a couple best ball teams to like experiment. But we are like the best ball community is still a very, very small part of the larger community.
Yeah, I like to think so as well. Like we're the early innovators. I like to think, like I think it's on everybody in the community, any content creators, any draft sites to try to grow it. I mean, it definitely is something that takes a village, and the barrier to entry is probably a little bit higher than the fantasy football side of things. But I mean, you just imagine walking to a dude who loves drafting his two teams, and you're like, what if I told you you could draft 20 of those tomorrow if you wanted to?
Right.
I don't think that's a very hard sales pitch.
Yeah, I agree.
On the best ball tip, we'll kind of like segue into that. I want to start pulling up DraftrPass. Wyatt, me and you, brother, we're gonna go through, vote for some teams, and we're gonna find out what you like. Like that is also a part of like doing this together. Like we're gonna quickly like find out going through like, oh, these are the type of teams that Wyatt prefers. Okay. So I'll go there. DraftrPass over here again. Sorry, Ryan. I don't have two screens. I want to make sure it's on this screen. Let's see. How do you zoom in a little bit more on that? Because that's a little too small, I'd say.
Oh, we're good. I can. Well, maybe for the viewers.
Yeah.
You're so considerate.
Yeah. So some would say considerate, others would say unprepared. But either way, I know which one I prefer. But for anyone that doesn't know what DraftrPass is, which if you don't, and you're still here, I have no clue how. I tweeted about it nonstop. But essentially, it is a hot or not for fantasy football teams, best ball teams for now. What happens is you upload your underdog CSV to the website right here. If you don't have an account yet, you'll hit sign up. As soon as you do that, you'll pick your name. I recommend picking your Twitter name so people could find you on Twitter. As far as I know, no one has been a targeted attempt of cyberbullying yet because of the draft. So I'm part of this is I'm hopeful that we could all start not ragging on each other's best ball teams more, but civilly discussing what we like about them and don't. And so once you have your teams uploaded, they'll start getting voted on. You'll go here to the leaderboard. We launched a drafter rating today. I'll touch on that a little bit more later. For now, I just want to get in this with why. What I'll do is I'll just kind of I'll read out the team, and then we'll see how we feel about that one, and then we'll break it down together. Now, before we do that, I want to see if because I would like to see it all on the same screen. Let's see. How's that? Blocks it. We're not there anymore. We're not there anymore. All right, this will do. This will do. Again, this is 46 subscribers, Big Loaf. I like to think this is acceptable. But first, we got Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Justin Herbert. For anyone wondering, the gold stars mean they're a part of a main stack. So that means a main stack being at least one quarterback and a running back or a pass catcher. So, as long as you have the quarterback, it's that. And the silver stars are for secondary stacks. That's where, you have two guys from the same team, but without the quarterback. So we got Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Justin Herbert here. I'm myself a big fan of the 3 quarterback builds. Ashton Genty, David Montgomery, Travis Etienne, Algier, Devin Neal, Marshawn Lloyd, Tyreek Hill, Xavier Worthy, George Pickens, Jerry Jeudy, Michael Pittman, Alec Aminor, I hope I got that right, Ray-Ray McLeod, Bach Bowers, and Jake Ferguson. So 3-6-7-2. For what it's worth to you, Wyatt, I've learned that everyone kind of has their own things they hone into when they're grading a team or wanting to vote on. Right. Mine is the running back room. Mm-hmm. What would you say is your most important element of a best ball team being good to you?
Yeah, I kind of do a quick when I've been doing these, I kind of do a quick scan of the position groups and see if I instantly think oh, this position group is not good enough. I don't think that this can get all the way, this position group. And then I'll check out the other team and see if I feel that way about one of their position groups. And if I don't, it's usually going to decide it for me, because for the most part, I can vote on which players I like to be drafting, but I want to be more voting on the teams that I think are constructed well. because I could be wrong about players. I can have wrong player takes pretty easily. So yeah,
no fault of your own at times.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, it's about first analyzing the structure of the team, going position group by position group real quick. So like this first team on the left, I have no issue with 3 quarterbacks. I kind of have an issue with 3 quarterbacks this early, personally.
I agree, especially with the value there later too. Like I personally don't think the difference between Justin Herbert and say like Bryce Young or Michael Penix is that big. So with like that being the case, like I definitely agree, and I'm with you on the structure thing. Like and for the exact same reasons, honestly, of like I can't control a player take. Now I firmly believe that Saquon Barkley falling to 5th or 6th is a little wild, but I could be wrong about that, and that's like is what it is. But where I think things could start being a little bit more objective is like, hey, is this structured well? And the way I kind of view it, like in my head, it's broken up into 3 categories. You have like, bad team, viable team, and then everything ahead of that is like viable with some like extra, bells and whistles. But the minimum goal, and I think you could accomplish it every draft, is being viable. This team on the left, for instance, I'm willing to say this is at worst viable. It's not something that I would just like, immediately see and write off on the left team. Or to the right team. It's a little thin at running back for me.
The wide receiver core is a little suspect, in my opinion. Like enough that I'm like, like if we had not, I don't know, taken Dak Prescott, and waited on that second QB because we could have taken a wide receiver there, and then attack your 3 quarterbacks later, I'd probably like it a little bit more.
And I'm with you on that too. And like it's another thing, like every room is not necessarily going to be able to be strong. It's just like not possible. Like to just, you're probably going to have to sacrifice something. And to your point about this wide receiver room, like I personally think this is a little too thin at the running back. And so the fact that the wide receivers are also not like something I'm like, okay, well, if you sacrifice the running back, I would hope that your wide receiver core is something that would like, encourage me. And like, this isn't bad by any means, but kind of what you're saying relative to the rest of the team, it does feel a little weak. And I honestly, like, I'm not to blame Brock Bowers. And this is kind of the structure thing that, like, we were talking about. I would argue, like, if, you swapped out Brock Bowers for one of the cheaper tight ends and then maybe even added a third and, made that high draft capital pick, you spent a tight end, either running back or wide receiver, you like it a little bit more. At least that's how I feel, not to project that onto you.
That's the thing, right? Like, I am a big fan of Brock Bowers' cost and I'm drafting a lot. But if you're going to do it, you can't draft 3 quarterbacks this early because it messes up the structure of your team.
And that's also the benefit of the $5 cheap contest. You get to try these things out because you don't know that, until you draft way more fantasy football teams than any man should probably ever draft in a single year.
Yeah, you got to get those reps.
But yeah, then, I like that we're aligned here. Like, this seems like a show where we're not going to be, like disagreeing hard, but we might disagree. And the person whose team this is can maybe be in chat because I know a guy who pulls up Jahmyr Gibbs to number 1.
Yeah, I think we were talking about the same person here.
All right, we'll wait till the end to vote to say name. As you know, it's anonymous, so like we gotta make sure that we're judging subjectively.
I have some beef with this team too, though, because I don't think you have to draft Jared Goff at the turn there with Kyler Murray. I think you should push him to see if he comes back to you. With Jared Goff has been on the decline with his ADP. He's been falling a little bit. And he goes around like 116 now. So like we're right on the line of him coming back anyways. I would probably have pushed that and see if he comes back.
And see, he was at the turn because he picked one, 96, 97. Yeah, I guess his logic probably came in with Gibbs and JMO, and like this is also something I'm
relying on this. Yeah, felt the need to draft him. Which I mean, sometimes you put yourself in those positions like, you draft 2 pass catchers from the same team early, and you say, well, this team has to have the quarterback on it. And you put yourself in that situation sometimes. Like that's the path for this team. So I'm okay with reaching a little bit on the QB. I have no issue with that. It's kind of a Jared Goff thing because he's kind of been falling.
All right, like I'll put you on the hot seat. Stacks, like I don't want to say you're somewhat of like a hot take, but the way people go about them, there's definitely some nuance. For you, you're up at 97. You have JMO and Jahmyr Gibbs here. Do you think that if this team did not get Jared Goff, that this team, like, not dead in the water, but like you like it significantly less, and also think that like, oh, it's a lot worse now because it doesn't have him.
I think you're fine if you end up missing on Jared Goff, because I think Gibbs can get there without Jared Goff, obviously, and Jameson Williams can get there without Goff, because he also gets involved with some, end arounds, that kind of thing too. Like he can hit a high ceiling without Jared Goff coming along with him. Even if he does most of his work through the receiving game, Jared Goff as a pocket QB, his pass catchers can get there without him getting there sometimes, because he's not adding anything else extra. Like if he throws for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, Jameson Williams could have had a great day, but Jared Goff, he might not make your lineup.
And we're again aligned, for show entertainment. Like we're probably gonna have to start disagreeing soon. Yeah, I don't think it needs it either. I think like a lot of these, look at all these silver and gold stars on here. Like somewhat of my argument is like, hey, I think you're gonna stack naturally a lot more than you think you're going to or are. Mm-hmm. And this is one where, like, I'm not necessarily faulting whoever's on the right, but like they clearly were like, no, I have to lock in Jared Goff for the stack. And there could be some value to that, like if it goes that way. But there's also a million outcomes where you don't need him to. And so like I just don't want to pigeonhole myself into drafting anything, especially like earlier we were talking about structures, and that feels a little out of it, that like, oh wow, like you took Jared Goff at 97, like you invested that much at quarterback to reach on Goff, and like you said, he's falling, and like that might not be like the best way to maximize the value of your team.
There's also like when this pick is being made, at the turn, when this person takes Kyler Murray and Jared Goff, the only wide receivers they have are T. Higgins, Zay Flowers, and Jameson Williams. And then they also have Trey McBride. Well, we know they're drafting Kyler Murray to go with Trey McBride, but Joe Burrow is gone. Lamar Jackson is gone. They're looking at this team. They could be thinking to themselves, if I don't lock in Jared Goff, I do have to try and find where I'm going to get another stack on this team, and might not have felt comfortable in the room to do that.
Yeah, and 20-second clocks now. If you're not doing the slows, you got to make these decisions on the fly, and like that, I think that's probably also something. Like a lot of people said, like I fell asleep drafting this team. Please do not, please do not yell at me. So like there's a lot that could happen. We also don't know what the board liked in there. Just based on we'll get this one off the screen. We'll do one more. Part of the reason, like like DraftrPass, I don't want you on here to grade 30 teams with me, but like it gives us 2 teams to discuss, and I like to think there's some value in that, but I'm probably leaning myself to the right team. Now, are you with me on that, or are you team left?
I honestly think this is a tough decision, because I do think that like I said, the right team, I think they reached a little bit on Goff. I also think the wide receiver core is a little thin as well, so it ends up becoming a tough decision. When it's this close, I'm probably going to go with the team where I like the players a little bit more, in which case I think I'm going to head over to the right, because I'm a fan of Kyler and Trey McBride a lot. I have no issue with the Gibbs 101 personally. I think he has one of the highest ceilings, if not the highest ceiling in fantasy football. If that Detroit offense changes at all without Ben Johnson, I have to imagine one of those changes would be to just load up Jahmyr Gibbs. Like a new offensive coordinator comes in and sees Jahmyr Gibbs versus David Montgomery, and they go like, yeah, why is this a 50-50 split? That could happen. And I actually think the Rashid Shaheed and Rashad Bateman were a little bit discounts. I just don't like the way it finished up for the wide receiver core.
Yeah, a lot of potential zeros there. They could have locked in someone that with some more conceivable volume, like Alec Pierce, Darius Slayton, someone like that, instead of like those are 3 potential zeros. Dontayvion Wicks, I love you, brother, but you are a potential zero.
Yeah, and just kind of going back to what we said in the very beginning, like structurally, I think this team is a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree, and like this is one of those ones to me where like that I think both of these have like clear weaknesses, and like I also mentioned earlier, for everyone new showing up, first thanks for coming, but I do prefer the running back room is definitely the tiebreaker to me, and I like the Gibbs, Pollard, Swift first 3 backs compared to Genty, Montgomery, and Etienne. That's not set for me. So before we vote, I believe this is the man that I'm pulling up on screen, Omega King, 100% me for sure that we both believe this is. So let's see if he's right. And we're picking your team, brother, so hopefully you're happy about that.
I kind of want to change my decision because we know it's him, but
Well, the team's 5-11. He's been punished enough,
Yeah,
it seems.
people hit. Yeah, it's a terrible team on that guy.
It's just the puppy. That's okay. Maybe he was experimenting a little bit. We don't have the draft date of this displayed yet. That's something we're thinking about adding on there to help provide a little bit more context.
It's a good tournament to pay the rake in.
It's a good tournament to just zone out in and do nothing and except draft 50 picks within 15 minutes and a million slows.
Omega was too busy at his smoker, wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. All right, before we get into that, I'm gonna new to the streaming game. We're gonna go through chat. OMG God, love to disagree. Me too, brother. It's fun arguing in good spirit. If I agreed with everybody, that would just be boring. I'm hoping I want to disagree with you on something, brother. I'm hoping we get there to this point. I thought this was a Counter-Strike cosplay. Yeah, I've been accused of being multiple things wearing this mask, such as in debt to the IRS and on the run, an operator of an OnlyFans account, a Counter-Strike cosplayer. No, you could have just gave me a player. Cosplay, I could at least been the CS:GO guy, and I'm not cosplaying a dude. I'm impersonating a professional esports player. That hurts my feelings. T. Higgins, wide receiver one. I automatically go to the other team. I'm with you on that, but some of it is also how hungry the wide receiver people are on the platform, and it's just look, if you picked kind of early in the second round. If you're not willing to pull somebody up the board or maybe take another running back, T. Higgins is on the top of your board a lot at that 2-3 turn. So sometimes T. Higgins to me, if he's on my team, I don't love him isolated, but sometimes for structure, it's okay, I'll add in a Higgins share. Huge reach on Goff. More likely to pass Goff if only one Lion. Is there the way to upload teams through mobile, or I got to steal my daughter's laptop? Well, for the bit, I would like to say the latter, but no, you could request your CSV from Underdog, which that I do believe in. Wyatt, if be awesome, correct me if I'm wrong. You have to request that from the desktop, but maybe you could do that the mobile browser.
I don't know if you can request it from mobile. I mean, I have my phone.
Yeah, I mean we can't check. We'll live check in person.
Yeah,
we find out if you could request this. I'm just playing. We don't have to do that. But if you figure it out, I'll go through the chat though, bring it up. But yeah, you can. If you just click the file in the email, Peppers, that is the CSV. It should download it to your phone, and then you can go to your. When you hit upload, it should be in the files that downloaded to your phone.
Yeah, I think you do have to do it on desktop.
I've honestly been surprised at how many people have asked the mobile upload questions. Thank God for our amazing Dev Aiden. I would have thought no one was doing mobile uploads. So yeah, Peppers, if that works, you're in. If it doesn't, feel free to holler at me in a Twitter DM. We'll get something sorted out for you. They don't think so. Sure, should be able to on browser. All right. We're back. We're back into it. So this is a post draft. This up here means just what contest type it is. We didn't want to put BBM up here because I bet people are a little bit more interested in the BBM and puppies. But on DraftrPass, all teams are equal. So this just lets you know that it's 18 teams. And post draft, so we don't know if that's a puppy 2, BBM, any of that. We'll do the same thing as last time. This Jaden Daniels, Justin Fields. I like that. When you go elite quarterback, are you the type to wait a lot on your second one, or do you sometimes push the button and say, hey, I'm actually gonna take a guy at around 90 to the 110 range and try to have 2 really live shooters every week?
It depends a little bit on the quarterback we're talking about in that range. If it's one that I feel strongly about, that I think is already a discount, I don't have a problem with taking them. I guess what is essentially kind of early for already having an elite QB. But I do try to wait until at least hitting that, QB pocket that's around round 10 or so before I even consider it.
It's hard not to, man. Me and Wyatt are gonna go over our 5 best value picks later, but I'm not. It's not one I'm spoiling, but it's just a concept. I think quarterbacks as a whole are all too cheap, and if the Herberts, the Jordan Loves, Penixes, Bryce Youngs of the world were priced properly, I would be much more willing to go Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Jaden Daniels at cost, and I'd honestly argue to be higher. But the fact that you could get 3 quality NFL quarterbacks to where you go a 3 QB team and you could just rotate Justin Fields, Bo Nix, and Bryce Young. every week. I mean, for the cost that it requires to do that, it's really hard for me to not just want to do that almost every time and just mix and match those combos of late guys.
Yeah, I draft very little elite QB this year. I'm really only drafting them when I see them fall, except for kind of Hurts, because Hurts is the cheapest of the 4 elite QBs, and I'll actually draft him at ADP, like if I have AJ Brown or if I'm like at a corner where I can do, Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith. I don't have any problem with them at ADP, but the others I try to wait for them to fall, and then I get exposure.
Finally, we disagree. Jalen Hurts is my most overpriced quarterback according to Draft Capital in my rankings. He cannot get tackled at the 1 forever. But now that one is obviously like, the elevator pitch. But my real rationale was like part of like the regression on like, hey, Saquon and everyone can't go down at the 1 all the time. So like now he's had like 4 straight, like 12 plus rushing touchdown seasons. So at a certain point, you could probably tell me like, hey, Big Loaf, when are you just going to realize this isn't variance, which is a fair point, but I do think it can regress. And more importantly, that the defense is still phenomenal, and that offense, the heart of it now seems to be Saquon. And I worry about their just play volume in general. I think they're going to be a very slow team. I think they're going to eat up a lot of drives. I don't think they're going to have to force the ball a lot, and there's a lot of mouths to feed on that team. And for, a limited amount of plays on an overcrowded team, I just worry that, he's going to have, a lot of floor weeks in those ones where he doesn't get those 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns.
Man, last 4 years, QB6, QB2, QB1, QB6, over 21 points per game every year. It's pretty good. I don't know.
He is like my QB like 7 or 6 or so. So it's not like I'm that far off, but just in terms of like how far he is above, let's say Burrow, like my arm is he's closer to like that Burrow. I think Burrow is honestly a tier of his own because the tier break the Mahomes than he is to the Daniels one. But all of the historical data will clearly point to like, hey, that makes no sense based on what he's done recently. But teams are playing slower now. Passing attempts are going down, and they also didn't have Saquon Barkley, but for one of those years, and maybe the second years where Saquon could have scored 30 touchdowns last year if he just did the devil magic of the Eagles didn't make him fall down at the 1.
He could have, but Jalen Hurts is really good at his job too. So
fair enough. That has been my most controversial take. It was a fun disagreement. Now after this, now that we disagree, we can no longer talk to each other anymore. That's how this works. But then we have another Gibbs team with Monty. I'll read out the rest of the running back room: Tyler Algier, Braylon Allen, Justice Hill, and Miles Sanders. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this Gibbs Monty pairing on this team.
I get it, and I think in past years it's fine, but this is a year where I'm not into it because I think if you're drafting Gibbs now, you're betting that he does take over more of the backfield. So I'm not as into it this year.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and also just that if something were to ever happen to Gibbs, there's going to be teams with David Montgomery that did not take Jahmyr Gibbs, and they're going to have a big leg up on you. So like when you're handcuffing like with that expensive of draft capital, like I think you're just better off not doing it. Like but Pacheco and Brashard Smith, that I'm okay with. Gibbs and Montgomery's a little too far in that direction. But
I agree there.
Considering they have 2 on the same team, this is honestly a very thin running back room, and like that's insane to say with this team on the right not taking 1 until 144 to start, as OMG said in the chat. But let's see if they make up for it at wide receiver at least. They got Ladd McConkey, Devontae Adams, George Pickens, Deebo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall, Trey Harris, and Jack Beck. How you feel about this wide receiver room, Wyatt?
It starts good. Then there's a real weak spot in the middle because I do not like Deebo or Pearsall at cost. Although Pearsall, this was a fall for him. They took Pearsall at 91, so I guess that's fine. I do really like Trey Harris. I personally still am in on Jack Besh, but I don't know when this team was drafted because Jack Besh has fallen so far. When he started that fall, I backed off drafting Jack Besh to see how far he would go, and now I'm kind of back in as he settled in around like 150. So if like this was a reach on Besh, I don't like it.
Yeah, but I've seen him get lows down to 170, but it's top heavy. I like the Trey Harris pick. Like I don't want Trey Harris to be my 3rd wide receiver or 4th wide receiver I draft, but if he's my that would be his 6th. I'm like, more okay with like putting him in there. And just like, you could shelter certain players and kind of dictate what you rely on them for. Like last year, I think CMC had an 8% advance rate. And I think a lot of that is because people drafted that team like it had CMC. And so maybe they waited on their second running back a good bit until like the 0 RB tier. Whereas I think you could, say you're scared of CMC, you could also go, high T, as the kids call it, 3 running backs in the first 5 picks. And that way, if something was to happen to him, your running back room could hopefully still compete. And then if something doesn't happen and he crushes it, now you have 3 amazing running backs.
Did this person draft Trey Harris first or Justin Fields first? Can I get to see the pick on Justin Fields?
Trey Harris before Fields.
Did they get sniped on Herbert? They had to have, right?
That is for the void of the draft board to find out. But yeah, I could see that this seems like they were setting that up. It seems like they were trying to set that up, or maybe Fields fell to 115 and they couldn't pass on that, and said like, there's a story behind every draft, isn't it so beautiful?
I get it. Like Fields falls and you think like, oh, I want the discount on Fields. But if you've already set up McConkey and Harris, I think you're locked into drafting Herbert at that point.
With how cheap he is,
if it's available to you.
Yeah, fair enough. The only counter would be, what if Justin Fields or JD like have 2-3 rushing touchdowns now that week, and then Ladd McConkey, and so there are outs. Is my only point. I don't think that's a sound argument, but like I could see why. My guess is this dude took Fields like because he fell to 115, and we finish off with Warren, Ertz, and Taylor. This we don't know what this ADP, but Warren was going a lot higher. But probably like 3 weeks ago or so. So this could be somewhat recent. We got Warren, Ertz, and Mason Taylor. That's solid 3 tight end room to me. There's real tight ends with upside that are so cheap these days. Why? Kind of in the same vein as quarterback. Like why do I want to spend so much when I could try to build them in the aggregate, at least over like X amount of drafts?
No, I like that for a 3 tight end room.
And then we're on the right where maybe I hope it doesn't influence too much, but this dude, spent 20 higher picks on Justin Fields.
Yeah.
And then Drake May, to me, this is a 3 quarterback type of team, but to this person's credit, like both of these guys have some rushing upside, so I can understand stopping it too. What I don't understand, and why I really hope we don't disagree on this one. I know I've been rooting for us to disagree, but this one, I hope not. How do you feel about this running back room?
It's obviously weak. There's no way around it, right? It's not impossible to work. My best hit last year, with top 50 in the big board, was a team similar to this, in which I was full on 0 RB, and then I hit 8 running backs to end the draft, essentially. And that got there because I hit on I hit on Bucky, I hit on a couple other, I can't remember, but. So it's possible. It can happen, but it's a really thin needle to thread.
Yeah, a little too bold. Like hopefully, again, if this is a puppy, like I don't mind trying things out, but like hey, if you have the money to like burn $25 on a BBM, go for it. But like I want to lock in some floor here, and this is definitely like a little bit too much game theory for me. Especially with like some of the back choices, like I would argue that some of these guys outside of like Garendo aren't even like the best RB like handcuffs to like target. Like Justice Hills, he's never gonna have Derrick Henry's workload if anything were to happen to the King. Like they would probably bring in another like back for that short yardage stuff. He's the pass game specialist more than anything else.
Yeah, like this team needs an injury to happen before the season starts.
That's an evil thing.
Not on the team, like a running back ahead to free up one of these running backs.
How evil is that? This team's just based in evil. It only works if if another man has something bad happen to him. For me, on that spiritual level alone, I'm against this. The fact that you're just like, hey, I'm gonna have to root for, I guess, some grown men to like have some issues getting on a football field.
See, here's the problem with this team is that they drafted Mark Andrews after drafting Trey McBride. Like that should be a running back. Even if you're pulling up a running back there, for structure reasons, I think you almost have to.
Yeah, I mean, they started first pick was Chase. That's the turn. Yeah, so they went 5 wide receivers. That'd be their first 6 picks. You didn't need Matthew Golden and Jaden Reed here, and to like also do that, you don't even set up the Jordan Love stack and Drake May, where you could have probably got Ramondre Stevenson or something. But I don't think we need to spend too much time on this. We clearly prefer the left. Like if I could double downvote this, I will. Maybe we'll work on adding that feature.
Yeah, I have a soft spot in my heart for the team on the right and those kinds of builds, and at least in like those directions, because I am a little bit of a 0 RB zealot. But that one, I just don't think it was done correctly. So I'm going to vote for the left for structure reasons.
To the left now, Justin McMahon of reallygoodpicks.com. If you're watching this, you're there. And sorry, Carl Lucci. I wasn't, hey, and it was best ball. So, if you're watching this, I did rag you a little bit. It's okay. I'm not you just the team. And, I'm going to have this pulled up in the background. We touched on that. You did mention your zero running back zealot. As, you've been playing fantasy for quite some time. I would love to run this idea by you to where I think zero RB used to work a lot better in the days where, the first round was Adrian Peterson and then Matt Forte and then Marshawn Lynch and then, running back, Calvin Johnson and then running backs. Whereas now you could get these backs with, in the modern NFL, 60%, 65% of the carries is the modern day bell cow. And now that those guys are so cheap, I worry that some of the value of zero RB went away because the running backs became more affordable.
Well, I think what zero RB has kind of evolved over the years too, to go along with that. So I don't think I'm starting to consider teams as zero RB that weren't considered zero RB teams previously, just to catch up with where the game is now. Zero RB used to be strictly you're not drafting an RB before round 7, no matter what, that's what it is. Now I think honestly, if your first 5 picks aren't running backs and then you start dipping in, I still consider that a zero RB team, as long as you're kind of building it structurally correct. You're trying to find elite players at the other positions trying to avoid some of that risk at drafting a running back highly who they have higher injury rates. As long as you're doing that,
dead zone has evolved, with the running back dead zone
Absolutely.
Used to be considered is no. Now there's real running backs in this so-called dead zone.
I would say it doesn't exist anymore. I don't think there is a dead zone anymore. I think there's just bad bets and good bets across the draft. And there isn't a spot in a draft where there are tightly consolidated bad bets the way they used to be.
I love how you put that. I agree. I agree for sure. And it's interesting that some people zero RB we think we know what that's defined as, but then I think if you try to present taking running back in round 6, 7 through 8 right now, and you posted that to the timeline, I don't think people would necessarily even call that a zero running back team anymore these days.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So I'm gonna shut the DraftrPass part down, make my and Wyatt's pretty face a little bit bigger on the stream. Wyatt, thanks for voting on these teams. Anyone that wants to check out DraftrPass, hot or not, but for best ball teams, you go through. These could be your teams that are getting voted on the pool. It's completely free. After you upload, people will start voting on your teams, and you'll start showing up on the leaderboard. We actually launched Drafter ratings today, which is, I think, the easiest elevator pitch for everybody is Ken Palm, but for your matchups against other teams that you went head-to-head with. So this is basically your strength of schedule adjusted voting matchups. So Wyatt, if you uploaded a team that's 5-0, but it beat an 0-10, 0-9, 1-10, etc. team, that team would not be rated as highly. And then if that happened enough across all of your teams, that would reflect in your ranking. But completely free to sign up. I think it's a fun time. I think, even just scrolling through teams, there's a lot of value to be found. You could go look at, anyone's teams on here and try to get some ideas. I'm not necessarily worried about the edge being gone just because this game is so variance riddled because we have to play for 17 weeks that, I wouldn't have a show, offer to bring Wyatt on and run my Twitter account if I didn't think I was, a good fantasy football player. And even with that being said, you can look at all my teams you want. I'm not really worried about what that impacts. I mean, unless we're in lobbies together. I do want to avoid you in lobbies. But outside of that, I don't think it's going to have much impact.
I do want to agree with one note you had right there that I heavily agree with, is that there is so much variance to fantasy football that even when we have a ton of information about our opponents, so much can happen once the season starts that a lot of it just doesn't matter. It doesn't actually give as much of an edge as we think it does.
Yeah, and so much of what you got right, if you took Rashid Shaheed and Chris Godwin last year, I think you made the correct decision, but then it gave you the, worst result it could have, just assuming that, you want Chris Godwin and him healthy. It's they did contribute, but you want all your guys healthy week 7.
That's what I was saying when we had the big hoopla over the couple days when people were upset about draft hackers and overlays and things like that and how unfair they are. I'll use quotations there because I frankly do not care, is because even if you had a great ranking system that, like last year, told you Rashee Rice, Chris Godwin, Rashid Shaheed, those teams lost. Like those, they were massive hits. You were right to be ahead of market on them, and you would have lost.
Yeah, and then the inverse of that, like say Jonathan Taylor, who finished the season very strong, but weeks 1 through the fantasy regular season almost, you not taking him was a great move by you, and then out of nowhere he drops a 40 burger week 16, and he's the guy you need, and that's just how the game is, and you can't predict that. If you can, I think you're lying, or you're meant for better things in life than predicting that. If that's how good you are,
you can have the literal best draft rankings in the world going into a basketball tournament and lose pretty easily because of variance. And because we're not even getting to
about the teams, right?
Like yeah,
there's more bullets.
Yeah,
like would you rather have one $500 team or 100 $5 teams?
100.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you, Underdog, for putting out the cheap contest, drafters, fast draft. Wyatt, company man, you're doing me the favor, brother, putting you on the spot. Fast draft. You want to explain to the folks what that is?
Yeah, so first off, it lives up to its name in the way that you get drafts done really fast. But it's got a few different games that you can play there. The original format is you're drafting 6 players, and it's no quarterbacks, just running back, wide receiver, tight end. And each week you get your 4 best scores, but you have multipliers that you can apply to them before the season starts. So you can kind of arrange your players with the multipliers based on how you think they're going to do in that season. And they do that for IDP. There's the Origins tournament, which is rookies only, which is a lot of fun. Like any dynasty players out there, all your rookie drafts are over and you're still got that itch. Like you could literally go to fast draft, do an Origins tournament and be drafting just rookies and kind of, be in a tournament format for that. And then they also just recently launched the Rabbit, which is closer to a full-on best ball tournament. It's 15 rounds, 10 teams. You play 1 QB, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex, 1 tight end each week. And I think that having 2 flex and 2 wide receivers is a nice little wrinkle because that's unique to any other site. Enables you to build more uniquely and differently than you can in other places. It's a really cool place to be. The drafts are fast. Like I said, when you do an actual live draft, it's 20-second clocks. And then you can also do turbo mode where you set your rankings prior to the draft. You can, and for these like flex 4 where you're just drafting 6 players and there's no QB, where it's kind of positionless, it's just straight rankings. You can have submitted into it and you can like adjust them right before the tournament goes live. Either like you have your rankings and then before you go in the tournament, you can make further adjustments specifically for just entering the turbo mode drafts, because you can max enter turbo mode drafts. Like you can set 5 turbo mode drafts, 10 turbo mode drafts, however you want, and they'll just go and run as they get filled without you even having to be there. And then for the Rabbit, where you do have positional needs, you can set your limits as you set your turbo mode drafts to go. So it's a unique new way to play fantasy football, the way to play best ball. It's pretty cool. If you're not on yet, you can use code Wyatt for that $50 deposit match when you get on there.
Promo code Wyatt, WYATT, and Wyatt, that's a very unique product. I know everyone here is kind of used to the traditional format, but what I would like to sales pitch that as is like, wow, like that sounds like a different game, which means there's probably going to be an edge there compared to the games that have been played a lot longer. So if you want to like try out something for fun to see like if you have a better edge, like there's no better place to do it than like these new products and contests, because it's not that the Underdog one is solved, but you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe fast draft is solved.
No, absolutely not.
But I'll put it up here in the show. It's in the comments, fastdraft.app. You could use promo code Wyatt, WYATT for say the bonus again.
$50 deposit match for your first deposit.
There you go. Go crank out some stuff. Try to find a new edge. Like that's always what you should be looking for is an edge. And good segue. I feel, speaking of edges, Wyatt, we have prepared 5 guys that we believe bring us an edge in terms of ADP value on Underdog app. Maybe we could do a fast draft ranking show at some point too. That could be fun. But for now, Underdog, we have our 5 favorite players at ADP. No particular order or at least I didn't organize mine in that way. Wyatt, if you did, you're a better man than me. But I have 5 guys, guest honor, and give me maybe the privilege of arguing with you. Who is your number 1 nomination?
So I put mine in terms of ADP. So this is going to be the earliest to the latest player going. But my first one is Brock Bowers, who I'm staying on business with Brock Bowers. I know there's a lot of people out there who push against the elite tight end this year, but I think this is a very unique bet that we get to make with Brock Bowers, who had the greatest rookie tight end season of all time, set the rookie reception record regardless of position, and things only got better for him, in my opinion. He got a massive QB upgrade. He got a coaching upgrade. Chip Kelly has only run fast-paced offenses in the NFL. You can tell me how he was slower paced in college. That's a different game. I don't think it translates necessarily. What he's done in the NFL has always been fast-paced. This is also a team where, with Pete Carroll coming back, this team wants to win. Pete Carroll's not here to rebuild the Raiders. They made these moves because they want to win. That's why they brought Geno Smith over. And they're in a division that's pretty tough. Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, these are all good offenses. These are all offenses that are going to put up points. They're in a division where they're going to have to be putting up points often. I expect them to put up a lot of points. I expect Brock Bowers to be a big part of that. I think he should be a first-round pick. I'm happy he's not. I was drafting him as a first-round pick to start the offseason. I had no problem having him at the turn in the first round. And as he falls, I continue to draft him. I really think this is like a potential generational wealth opportunity with Brock Bowers. Like, we were super pumped to be drafting like Travis Kelce, pick 7, pick 8, pick 9 in years past when he was at his prime. And we could be looking at Brock Bowers already at Kelce prime right now. It wouldn't surprise me if he is. It wouldn't surprise me if he's better than him, because really the only thing that's missing from his profile from last year was some touchdown luck. And if he hits, the outlier touchdown opportunity, touchdown share, not even necessarily outlier, just like league average. Yeah, expected for the amount of targets he gets. Like, this is a significant advantage at tight end. Like, he could be the equivalent of a top 10 wide receiver, top 5 wide receiver, but you get to play him in your tight end spot.
And see, my qualms with the elite tight ends, this is not an anti-Brock Bowers propaganda show. I have no qualms with that man's talent. It's more the fact that it's a one-off position and it's a lot of capital to spend, whereas, if he is a top 10 wide receiver, in my mind, I also want 2 top 5 running backs, or, I need to hopefully have 3 top 10 wide receivers. So the fact that it's a onesie position turns me off. Is any of that flavor to you, or are you just pure player take? Is look, I know structurally it might not be awesome, but he's going to be that good where it's going to pay off anyway.
There is part of it that you have to understand when you do it. It changes the way you have to draft the rest of that team, because you can fall behind in other places by drafting that elite tight end. So I think you have to make some concessions to that. Like, when I draft Brock Bowers, I'm tending not to draft a QB highly. And those are actually more likely to be a 3 QB team where I'm waiting to draft my QBs, so I can make sure I still feel strong at running back and wide receiver.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. If you, draft Brock Bowers, you need to draft like you drafted Brock Bowers. And that's really true with, every player you draft. Whatever you do should change the next thing you do for the most part.
Yeah, I agree.
But, slight disagreement there. Well, I'll rate them all and, how much we agree. Slight disagreement, but this isn't anti-Brock Bowers. It's literally just, a best ball structural thing for me. I don't want any clips of me out there saying bad things about probably the best young and up-and-coming tight end in the league that I wish Isaiah Likely could get the role for. You went way bolder than me, brother. I'm a wuss. I picked out the later values, not completely worth the draft capital, but I definitely didn't have the stones to name a man in the going in the top 20. So props to you. My guy in the first ADP order is DeAndre Swift. I know a little bit cheaper than Brock Bowers, and what the best thing he did all offseason was just avoid any additions, and then outside of adding Ben Johnson, of course, but they haven't added anybody. I mean, they still could. I mean, I think it would have been worth their time adding Nick Chubb if they were interested, but he ended up going to the Texans. So it seems all systems go that DeAndre Swift is the RB1 on the Bears that just got Ben Johnson that I know everyone's excited about, to the point where 3 of the wide receivers go in the top 100, and Loveland almost did there for a little bit before the market kind of corrected it down. And, DeAndre Swift's a Bear too. So if you like the other Bears, I think you like him. And I mean, it's his backfield. And, I know his advanced metrics last year weren't great. I think Warren Sharp posted something today about him having like the lowest rushing yards over expectation. But like, I'm honestly willing to give at least some of that to the scheme, and I'll be willing to bet like, hey, if the running back one in Ben Johnson's offense is going 70 while the rest of the team's really expensive, I'm going to try to get a lot of my Bears shares through Swift.
Yeah, Swift is right on the edge for me. I think his price is appropriate, but like I'm not jazzed to be taking him. I think as a player, he's always left us a little bit wanting because of the little bit of downfalls in his game, that like his vision is kind of just okay. It's going to get him into trouble sometimes. I think that's actually why he had like the whole rumors of the Bears wanting to move on from him because of the time when he was at the Lions. He started, that started but that was actually because of Deuce McAllister, was it right? The running backs coach, I believe.
Oh, Deuce Staley! Shout out,
Deuce Staley,
Steelers legend.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it was because like DeAndre Swift kind of freelances out there as a running back, doesn't really see the lane all the time, but he should be getting a pretty high workload for the Bears. I think that's should be expected. The really only places he's going to lose out is Roschon Johnson's going to do the third down pass blocking for him. And Roschon Johnson's probably going to do a lot of the short yardage, similar to last year, because that is where DeAndre Swift can struggle a bit, those two areas. That might not matter for Swift. It could matter. It might not matter.
And that's the nuance of the game we play. Because, do I think DeAndre Swift's the best running back in the NFL? And, I'm going to, the same way you like Brock Bowers because he's a great player. Yeah. I don't like DeAndre Swift for that reason. And, it's a volume game. So it's a delicate balance of, there's this guy that I like that's much more talented, but his situation's worse. And, in fantasy football, that situation should come first. You should want as much talent as possible. But, Swift isn't bad enough to where you could write off the situation that he currently has himself in.
Yeah, which is why I think his price is appropriate where it is, because I do expect him to get some volume and he will score fairly highly. I just worry about how much touchdown upside he has because of Roschon Johnson. If that caps him just a little bit, that's why I'm not super excited to be drafting him at his cost. I am drafting him. Don't get me wrong. I'm mixing him in. I'm making sure I stay at least at market with DeAndre Swift. I might even be slightly ahead of market. I'd have to check my exposures, but I'm not going to get too far ahead personally.
Slight disagreement again, but I can't hate on him, man, for not loving DeAndre Swift. I was one of those people last year, for what it's worth. I was in your shoes. You trying to tell me that DeAndre Swift is good right now? All right, bro. Who's your second guy that's probably more expensive than my first guy was?
My second one's Emeka Egbuka. He's easily my favorite Tampa Bay wide receiver to draft right now. First off, I thought he was a very, very good prospect coming into the NFL. And we have this problem in the fantasy community where we call people floor players and we, just decide immediately that they can't have a ceiling. And we've been able to prove this wrong countless times over and over again, just because a player seems like they're pro ready, but their ceiling is lower. And a lot of times these pro ready players are pro ready because they're so good. And being that good that early, will Emeka Egbuka be Jamar Chase? Absolutely not. But can he be a high volume in the wide receiver in the NFL who produces routinely as a high-end wide receiver too? I think so. I'm not sure he'll reach quite that height as a rookie, but he does have outs to do that because Mike Evans is going to be 32 going into the year. Not saying that his career is over, but we know that the way this works for players is they're usually really, really good and then really bad. The drop off just happens. When you see these age model curves, they look the way a curve, the way they do because it's an aggregate. But the way it actually works is a player usually pretty good for a long time and then they drop off. And so that could happen at any point for Mike Evans. Then we've got Chris Godwin returning from this ankle injury. We don't even know if he's going to be ready to start the season. Then Emeka Egbuka can play inside and out. Chris Godwin can play inside and out. Emeka Egbuka had a higher yards per out run outside than in the slot than in college. He's just projected to be this slot wide receiver in the NFL. But they can both play inside and out. I expect the Buccaneers to play 3 wide receiver sets more often than not. I think he has a lot of outs, and he's a very talented player on an offense that I like. Now, Tristan Wirfs being hurts that offense to start the season. But as we know, the weeks that matter most are the end of the year for these best ball tournaments, which is also when rookies tend to be peaking. So it's just everything looking in a good direction, I think, for Emeka Egbuka.
No, I think it was somewhat a surprise to everybody, maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that they drafted him when they did. It's hard for me to like my read for it to be like, hey, this is like really negative for like Jalen McMillan. Obviously, it's not a positive, but like you tell me how you feel about this. But I didn't think Jalen McMillan did anything last year to where it's just like, oh yeah, we have to go get another wide receiver in the first round, or we're not going to have a real wide receiver 3. So like, it's hard for me to interpret exactly like who this is going to impact the most, and outside of this, Ibuka carving a rollout, because it's just hard for me to believe that Jalen McMillan is just like, oh, they're done with him. I don't think they did this in spite of him being on that roster.
I think these should be bullish reasons for Emeka Egbuka, because despite having a good wide receiver core, they drafted him. They had to have felt so strongly about Emeka Egbuka as a player that regardless of what was going on with the roster, they wanted to make sure they got him on their team.
I can see that it's hard to love any of the rookies at cost, just because like you know what you're paying for, and some of it is inflated at times, but you also don't care about the floor either, and as you shouldn't. But at times it's harder for me to click them. But what I can see is the fact that I'm low on like basically all the rookies that didn't have like really high draft capital, like Tet and Genty, and I know I'm Hunter. Like I don't have a ton of any of them,
which honestly is a profitable way to draft for the most part. We get that hopium for a lot of rookies that don't pan out.
Yeah, and that's kind of my reason for like just like kind of shying away. It's just like, look, somebody's going to beat me, and that man very well could be Egbuka, but like kind of like how you said, not going to hit that ceiling this year probably, but could pay off costs. And it's like, okay, look, if you're not going to completely burn me, I think I'm okay being out on it. But like one of those rookies that I think are multiple probably that I think are overpriced are going to pay off, and it's on the surface level, it's like, hey, first round pick on a really good offense with a great quarterback in Baker Mayfield, and you're mad about that, and I don't know what to say. So this is like my spoiler one, so I'll fly through it again. That I mentioned earlier in the show for anyone new here. I cheated a little bit for this next one, and my answer is basically every quarterback after the ADP 100. We did talk about this a little bit, but I'll touch on it again. I think everyone's supposed to be more expensive on the quarterback room. There's only 32 of those guys are going to start, and we probably know. I just say rough estimate, 28 of them at this point we're confident in. There's probably a few dudes that we're not entirely sure if they're going to make it the whole year. 28 of them. And they're also the position that scores the most points. I think DraftKings, and like my hot take has been and remains, that I actually think it's the sharper ADP, if for no other reason than just like the quarterbacks are more expensive. You don't get to pick between, Bryce Young, a starting NFL quarterback who's going to play all the games presumably after how good he finished last year. Michael Penix, same thing. Over like who's going in like the 1-4, like Hollywood Brown. Even like, should Hollywood Brown really be going over multiple locked in starting quarterbacks? I don't think so. And that's not even necessarily anything against Hollywood. It's just like they shouldn't be that cheap. And I'm almost mad about it because I want to take Lamar Jackson. I want to take Josh Allen. I want to take Jayden Daniels. Maybe not Jalen Hurts, but I can't because all these quarterbacks are just being gifted to me, and it's just hard for me not to take them. Sam Darnold was going 170 last year, even when people knew he was the starter of the Vikings.
Yeah, so like when I do my rankings for Underdog, I basically take my projections and then aggregate them with the Underdog ADP. And the first few times after the NFL draft that I was doing it to do my update, like every time I would be way ahead on those quarterbacks compared to the ADP. And I started having to manually adjust them down a little bit just to smooth it out a little bit, like still keep myself ahead, but not have them too far ahead. So yeah, I agree.
And I actually had, for my projection, I had to do a scarcity based projections to like adjust that, like, hey, you can only start one quarterback. And cause all the projections line up weird, as you were saying. And even then it's like, geez, like all these cheap quarterbacks are still coming out as an insane value. So like, I'll keep it short on that one, but like, yeah, big for phone with 3 QB. You should have to pay more for these guys. And until the market makes you, I would use platforms like, Fast Draft, Drafters, DraftKings to go get your elite quarterback exposure. And then for Underdog, I'm not saying take 0%, but it's so hard to do something else and take advantage of that value.
Yeah, I agree.
So I know I cheated a little bit there. It's hard for you to disagree on such like a generalized statement.
Yeah.
But who's your third favorite player?
Drake May. Easily probably my favorite QB in the league now. I just love him as a player. I was big on him as a rookie. I thought he played incredible considering the conditions he was in New England for that first year, but started finished 9 games as a rookie. Okay. 18.2 points per game, 37 rushing yards per game. Fantastic stuff. And this is, mind you, terrible offensive line, no weapons to throw to. He was doing this. Then this offseason, all they did was try to build around him. Now, they didn't do the best job of getting him more pass catchers. Stephon Diggs, Kyle Williams, that's an upgrade for sure. It doesn't get you too jazzed up, but it is an upgrade, and I think it's important. I also really like them drafting Will Campbell. I love them drafting Trevion Henderson, who was almost going to be on my list, but I didn't want to pick 2 people from one NFL team. Who's an incredible pass blocker and really good weapon in the passing game. And I think he's going to be a featured weapon for them. Drake May, I just think like he could legitimately be a top 5 QB this year. I think the rushing is going to be there for him. We even know the coaching staff said to stop running towards the end of the season because they didn't want him to get hurt. So he could have had even more rushing yards as a rookie. I think that's going to continue into this year. Josh McDaniel brings a legit NFL offense to them. I think just like wheels up. Yeah. And people love to talk crap about Josh McDaniels, and a lot of it's warranted because of his time as a head coach. But whenever he's been an offensive coordinator, he's been pretty good. And even when he was a head coach, his offenses were kind of good. He's got some really good years. And people also say he's a Tom Brady merchant. He was the offensive coordinator for Matt Castle when Matt Castle had the big year for New England. Like I said, Las Vegas, Denver, he had good offenses for those teams. He was just a really bad NFL head coach.
Drake May fits into that bunch for me. But in terms of if I had to break those up, he is one of like my favorites. I like that I don't have to think about having to take him in the top 100. And just like, hey, even if he's bad, it doesn't matter. He's going to cost you like 4% of your draft capital. And like, I know a lot of folks that think he was the number 1 quarterback in the class this year. And he does run the football. The white guys that run the football, they sometimes don't get the acknowledgement that they run, but he does run the football. Like, and then I don't think that's taken into consideration. My fourth guy, kind of happy you didn't list your other person. It was Ramondre Stevenson. Weighs 40 more pounds than our boy Trevion. I like to think that could lead to some of the goal line work, and sometimes it takes these rookies a little bit to get going. Now this isn't so much anti-Trevion as it is like this to me gives like the vibe of a backfield that should be priced like Jalen Warren and Najee Harris were last year. Ramondre Stevenson is a good NFL running back. I know the fumbling problems are there, and last year, I don't like to say people quit or someone wasn't trying or the scheme ruined everything, but the Patriots were, it was somewhat pathetic on what they were trying to run out there on any given week. And so, like, I'm kind of willing to write off, like, a lot of, like, the bad last year as just, like, okay, like, I'm not good. I don't need to take that into account when this could all be completely different. And I just think that's going to stay close to a 50-50 split a lot of times, and what they both get divvied up might change here and there. But I still think Ramondre is a good quality NFL running back, and he's still there for a reason. And a lot of these coaches now want to have 2 running backs, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm drafting like very little Ramondre Stevenson, so we'll have a disagreement here.
Is it a talent thing for you? Cause Trevion's that good, and you think he's going to get relegated?
All those things. I think that. So to be clear, I think Ramondre Stevenson's going to have a serious role for the Patriots. Like, I think Trevion Henderson is a 15 to 18 opportunity kind of guy. Like, I think there's plenty of room for Ramondre. I think like at most this is a 60-40 split between these two in opportunities. I just think that Trevion Henderson is going to get a very large portion of the high value touches, and Ramondre Stevenson's going to have a lot of empty calorie touches between the 20s. And that doesn't interest me all that much. Now, I'll give you, if anything happens to Trevion Henderson, he's in a very good spot, and that's worth drafting on. I just think he's a little bit high for that.
And with like those type of like I think Ramondre is allowed to be considered like a true 0 RB target, and like those guys that like where I am taking like I just call them like 0 RB archetypes, like like Ramondre Stevenson, Lorendo's, and them. Ramondre fits this mold to where like, hey, he actually has volume too, and it's like, look, I don't think Ramondre Stevenson is gonna crack my lineup like 7 out of the 17 weeks that I'm in there. by any means. But with the fact that he always gets volume, he's always live for that, and we'll do it a few times and maybe have a spike week. And to your point, if anything were ever to happen to Hendo, he gets a big boost up. So I am somewhat of a sucker for the RB2s with some like real locked in volume for the fact that like I just get that, and then also the benefits of the 0 RB upside, and then like the fumbles, which I think are a lot of variance. God forbid Trevion fumbles 3 times in the first 2 games or something, which I would think that shouldn't mean as much as a lot of coaches make it mean. And then, Vermondre gets like 2-3 games to be the golden goose. And that could work both ways too, of course.
I do think you're right, though, that like he is a target in pure 0 RB strategies, though, because he does provide a little bit of floor that you're looking for when you're going for that strategy, where you want to make sure, like when you're doing that full 0 RB, unlike the one that we were voting on earlier, like when you start drafting running backs, you need to find some that you literally just count on for something to start the season. Like
6-7 points. Like you can't take zeros early.
Yeah.
All right. So like, all right, when disagreed a little bit, not too bad. All right, we're coming to the end of the alpha here. Who's your fourth player?
One of the best handcuffs that there is, Tyler Algier, who just like always gets drafted around like pick 150, and it's just like a lock in, one of the best picks of all the drafts. Like if Bijan Robinson stays healthy as he did last year, yeah, Tyler Algier might crack your lineup just a couple times in the games in which he scores a touchdown, which he can, even with Bijan Robinson healthy. But we know the ceiling that exists for him. If anything happens to Bijan, we know that he's a full 3-down back who will produce with it. And he gets drafted behind other handcuffs where we don't even know if they're any good. Like, why is Trey Benson drafted ahead of Tyler Algier? I think they have like a similar role, except Trey Benson has looked bad in the NFL so far, and we hope that he will improve.
Not that I agree with it. My guess would just be like people are more down on James Conner than they are on Bijan.
Yeah,
but I'm still with you regardless. Algier, I think, should go higher than him. And he's it sucks like the disadvantage of the high T is like, when it gets to that Algier range, I'm normally kind of taking care of it running backs, or if I'm not, I kind of need something else. But in terms of, you're still needing to add 3 backs or 2-3 backs to the back end of your room. And he's there, and some other things are taken care of like they should be. He's a perfect target that fits that mold of like, he can get you some usability, but also the contingency upside is through the roof.
Yeah.
All right, my final 2, like I'll just go back to back since they're on the same team, and then you can finish it out with your 5th is Rashid Shaheed and Juwan Johnson. The Saints defense does not look like it's going to be great. They are going to play at least 9 games in a dome. Their home games, 1 in Atlanta. They also have the benefit of like basically the whole NFC South. None of the defenses are phenomenal, so there's going to be a lot of fun games for them there, and I think they're going to be forced to pass the ball a lot, kind of opposite of what I was saying about the Eagles earlier, which is ironic because Kellen Moore's their coach. I think they're going to have to throw the football. That's, kind of what bad teams have to do at times, and I think there's enough talent on this team. I think Taysom Hill being gone is a huge deal for literally everybody. Like if you score fantasy points on the Saints, Taysom Hill's gone is a big boost for you. And Rashid Shaheed last year, just for him specifically, was dominant before he went down. Similar to that Chris Godwin pick, was going to smash ADP, and then the injury broke the wrong way. But I think the fear of how bad the Saints are going to be is more than baked into this cost, and I would argue overbaked. It looks like it's going to be a very concentrated offense. You know where this volume's going. You know what Rashid Shaheed's capable of doing, and now with Taysom Hill gone, Juwan Johnson should be a full-time player. He played with Tyler Shuck in college. Because Tyler Shuck's really old, but I don't seem to mind that. The Saints spent a 2nd-round pick on him when I would assume they knew that Derek Carr was somewhat on the way out, or it could have happened because of that injury. And so, the Saints spent some capital on him, and I think he's their guy, and they're going to have to be committed to slinging this thing.
Yeah, I don't have many notes. I agree.
And those were the 2 I was, the most adamant about. I have 50% of those guys, so I'm happy I'm a good salesman, because if you argue with that one, I'm like, wow, I can't sell water to a thirsty horse right now.
No, I think they're both pretty talented players, especially in Rashid Shaheed's case, and I think you're right that the downside of the quarterback's already baked in enough. Like these are good prices. And
for Shaheed specifically, he's a spike week guy. We don't have to get too much in depth on that, but he might have some lows for you, but he's the type of dude that could add 20 points to your team in any given week. And, like your ceiling weeks matter more than your average do. And Rashid Shaheed's definitely the type of guy that could show up on any given week, offer you a real ceiling. But all right, why don't you finish it off with your fifth and final ADP value?
My last one is Alec Manor. That's a prospect I liked coming into the NFL draft. Originally projected to be a day 2 pick, falls around 4. There was some reports that he had a medical issue pop up for his knee during the process, so that might have caused him to fall. But he's got a clear opportunity to be the wide receiver 2 for the Titans. And it's not often that you find that bet at his cost. And that's kind of how simple it is for me, is that if I'm looking for a wide receiver when it literally gets to the last round of the draft, I'm looking for a wide receiver who has a legit path to opportunity. And Alec Manor has that. He also offers that unknown rookie upside.
And so does his quarterback as well, which is intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done. If we're fighting over 18th round picks, like we're a little bit too much lost in the nuance. All you have to do is like conceivably have a path, and you should be a valuable pick. But he's one of the ones where I will say where like the upside, it seems a little realer than what the current cost of him is, because he could absolutely be out there immediately week 1. It's definitely within the range of outcomes. But that is mine and Wyatt's top 5 ADP values. Maybe I'll go through and clip this. Maybe not. I'm not sure how to do these things, as everyone knows. I'm new to the streaming game, but I like to think we offered some valuable insight here. And even if you agree or disagree, it's good to just consume information and then just have it somewhere. You don't have to act on everything, but it's good to listen to other perspectives, if for no other reason, just to have it. And like, for instance, like I'm high T. I'm not taking a lot of Tyler Algier, but like it's not because I don't like him. It's because my builds don't fit for it. And I'm like, damn, he's kind of right now. Like if something were to happen to Beach on, my portfolio personally is not well positioned to take advantage of that, at least through the form of the RB2 and him. So, I might have to start working that into some of these drafter ones. But we're coming up on an hour 15 here. We'll close out in 15. I'm the part of the show I was most excited for. I think Wyatt might have been too. The audience, I don't know if you agree with that, but you should. And we're going to give out our favorite cheap, easy recipe to cook. Wyatt, if you do not know, was a professional chef before this, and I'm the next closest thing, Italian. So we both really, really like cooking. And Wyatt is, truthfully, and I told him this in the DM when I asked him to come on the show, the only guy on the timeline where I'm like, fuck, this dude could cook better than I can.
Yeah, that was nice. I appreciate that.
Hey man, those pictures speak for himself. I guess I want to go first here because whatever he says is I would argue is going to be better than mine. I'm willing to admit that, and I'm going to try to win this battle of sorts. And then maybe after the show, Ryan, I'd have my recipe. Maybe we get it written down. I can make a fun little graphic for that. But I'm going to try to win with ease of use here, and how far this meal could get stretched out. So my argument is like if you like chicken, if you don't like your chicken, I'm going to argue that's because you don't marinate it in anything. If you're not a big chicken person, it's because you're not marinating your chicken. If you, I don't know how many people you're feeding, so my argument's for 2, but if I get, those Costco packs of chicken, which is basically about a pound, and I cube those up, throw them in a Ziploc bag, and then, whatever seasoning I have, just for the point of the show, the Kinder's red jalapeno garlic is very good. Throw some olive oil in there with that. Red jalapeno garlic seasoning, a little paprika, get that all mixed together, let it sit there for the TikToks will say, as soon as 30 minutes, as long as possible is my answer. But if you need it dinner in an hour, if you try to feed the kiddos or something, there's nothing wrong with that. And you could use half of the bag for what I like to do is, I don't think I have to explain how cooking chicken bits work. You turn on a pan, oil, all that fun stuff. But you take that out of there, you add in a little bit of garlic, let that get nice and soft. So add in some heavy cream, let that thicken up a little bit. Throw some Parmesan cheese in there once it's thick. Then throw your chicken back in it if you want to, and then have some pasta going on the side and just throw that in there. That I did average it out. It's going to cost you about depending on people you're feeling $2.10 or so a person. Like the spices one, that's hard because you have to go buy the jalapeno garlic, but I'm not getting God on the spice part of it. And then you have half the chicken left for the next day to go make, good chicken quesadillas. And you could stretch a whole pack of chicken into 2 good meals. Now, does that gourmet? No, but I know Wyatt, is it come with some heat? And my goal is to win this battle on the cheap and easy side of this food war.
All right. So I'm going to give the dish that when like my friends ask me for what's a simple, easy dish that they can make that will look really cool and look really good, look really fancy, this is what I give them, and that's a lemon ricotta risotto with chicken. So first thing we're going to do is we got to get all of our ingredients. So we're going to get some chicken, and I'm going to lay out a few different levels to this, of like ease to, if you've got some experience in cooking, you could take it to the next level a little bit. So like if you have some cooking experience and you're comfortable around a whole chicken, we want to start with a whole chicken and break it down into its pieces and parts and separate the breasts and the legs and use the carcass to make a stock. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, completely fine. No big deal. But you should go buy some chicken thighs, bone in, skin on. If you don't want to do the bone, that's okay too. But skin, I think, is pretty important here. So skin on, chicken thighs. If you aren't a fan of dark meat, just get some skin on chicken breasts. It's fine. It'll be all right. If you're not doing the whole chicken to make your own stock, go buy some of your favorite chicken stock that you can find in store, preferably something that's like actual bone broth, because then it'll have a little bit of collagen in there, which will help for when we make the sauce for this dish.
Ryan, okay. I don't know. I keep saying Ryan. I'm sorry, bro. That's very rude of me. But you're mentioning the stock. I'm very stock filled. Could you please like inform the people of like how big of a difference having your own stock makes in these meals?
Yeah, I mean it's a massive difference because you get to control the flavor, you get to control the salt level. Most stocks you find in stores are just frankly underseasoned and don't have as much flavor as the fresh thing. So if anyone's unfamiliar with making stock, we're just going to take the chicken carcass, the chicken bones, cut them up. Depending on if you want it to be a lighter stock or a darker stock. If you want a lighter stock, you do not roast the bones. If you do want a darker stock, we roast the bones first, and then we're going to put them into a pot with some mirepoix, which is celery, onions, carrots. Then we can add different aromatics to that as well, like garlic and herbs, and add water to the pot, and then bring it to a simmer and let that simmer go for a couple hours or so, depending on how intense you want the stock to be. So for this, preferably light stock, so no roasting of the bones for this one. And we're just going to let the stock go for a couple hours beforehand because we're going to take it and reduce half of it for the sauce. But so if you can't do that, no big deal. Find the best stock you can in store. You can also buy like, they do like chicken base. You can find little containers where it's basically like
the better than bouillons. I could sell for that company if they'd let me. I'm a big believer in those bouillons.
Yeah, that stuff's fine. It's probably better than the actual like stocks that you find. Make your stock. For making risotto, you have to have hot stock already. So make sure you have already preheated your stock. For making risotto, if anyone's unfamiliar, risotto is a rice dish. You require more stock than you're used to for making this rice dish than other rice dishes. So it's actually like 3 to 4 cups of stock for a cup of rice because it's going to absorb a lot of this. So also the rice is going to, obviously it's going to absorb more stock. It's going to make more servings per cup of rice. So be aware of that. So however much rice you're going to make.
Arborio rice, correct?
Arborio, yes.
Arborio, yeah, the fake Italian.
Real Italian.
Oh, I get it. Stream's over, everybody. That was mean. That was mean. Stream's over.
So get your stock hot to start. That's the first thing we're going to do. And we're going to take part of it, whatever the amount that you need to make your risotto, depending on how much rice you're going to cook. And then we're going to take the rest and put it to a side, and we're going to put it on low heat and start reducing it. We want to bring the stock for the risotto up to a simmer, and then just kind of lightly turn down the heat so it stays hot, but not actually simmering, so it's not reducing. The stock for the sauce, we are going to put on a simmer, leave on a simmer, so it actually reduces slightly over time. While those are getting hot, we're going to prepare our chicken. Whenever you're cooking a protein, you want to pull the protein out of the fridge 30 minutes before you plan on cooking it, because you want it to come up to room temperature by the time that you're getting ready to actually start cooking it. Cold proteins are harder to cook consistently because the middle is still cold as the outside is starting to cook. It makes for a harder cook to get it consistent. So you pull it out about a half hour before you start, pat it dry with a paper towel or whatever towel. Just make sure that it's dry. Otherwise, it's not going to sear as well in the pan because there'll be too much moisture. Then we're going to heavily season our protein, which is very important. This is one of the things that I think that most people miss on in their home cooking is not seasoning their proteins enough. It's not like seasoning a vegetable. Proteins are thicker. They require the seasoning, more seasoning to penetrate the flesh and actually season the protein all the way through. So we're also going to season in advance of cooking. So we pull out about 30 minutes beforehand. About 10 minutes beforehand, we're going to season. And we're going to season aggressively. Like I said, a lot of salt, a lot of pepper. More than you think. Okay. So we've got our chicken pieces. Medium-high pan. Whatever pan you're using for this is with the pan we're also going to use for the risotto. Preferably, this pan is a large pan with high sides to the pan. This could also just be a stock pot, frankly. But we want high sides to the pan because when we start cooking the risotto, we want the high sides to help keep the steam actually inside of the pan. Lower sides, all the steam escapes. Higher sides, the steam kind of rolls back in a little bit. So medium-high heat, make sure your pan is hot. We're going to sear the skin side down first. And when you do this, you want to put them in, apply a little bit of pressure to make sure that they are every square inch of the protein is touching the pan when you put it down, so that it can start to sear. And then we're going to step back and let that happen for a few minutes so we can allow that skin to start to crisp up. Once it's crispy, we're going to take them and put them onto a rack on a sheet pan. And those are going to be finishing in the oven. So about at this point, you can turn your oven on to like 350 or so. Yeah, 350 works. And then we're going to start a risotto because risotto is going to take approximately 30 to 40 minutes to do. And that's why people think it's daunting, because it's a labor-intensive thing, even though the process is actually kind of easy. So for the risotto, mince some garlic, mince some shallots. We're going to throw that into the pan that we just seared the chicken in. And we're going to let those get translucent. We'll turn the heat down to about medium when we do this. Once those shallots and garlic get translucent, which will not take very long, you can add in your arborio rice and start to toast the rice in the pan before we add any liquid. The point of this process is we're going to try to get every piece of rice to touch the pan and start to turn translucent themselves too, to help the cooking process. This will allow the starches to break down the way that we want them to. So we do that first. Then once that is done, we are going to take about a cup of white wine and add that to the pan, stir, and let it reduce. This is going to add some acidity to the dish as a whole and a little bit of flavor, just with whatever white wine. Pick a white wine that you like. Doesn't matter which one. Just whichever one you like. It's fine.
Without sugar in it. Don't get one of those sweet, like those
Very good
wines.
point. Unless you want your risotto to be sweet. Hey, more power to you. Then what we're going to do is you let that wine reduce out completely. Like the pan starts to get dry again. We take a ladle of stock, add it. Stir, stir, stir. Please do not use metal on metal for this. Get yourself a wood spoon. If you have a plastic spatula, that's fine as well. But the amount of stirring you're going to have to do, you will get a slight aluminum taste to the risotto if you're using metal on metal for this. Ladle at a time, let all of the stock reduce before you add more stock. So while you're doing this, you're going to, for the most part, have to be standing over your pot. Stir, stir, stir. Ladle, stir, stir, stir. But in the middle of this, we're going to make a nice little herb salad. So preferably, you've got some fresh herbs you've gathered. This can kind of be a collection of different herbs: parsley, chervil, dill, chives, anything like that's fine. We're just picking off the leaves. For the chives, you'll obviously have to chop them up a bit. The other ones, you can kind of just pick leaves. And we're going to season that lightly with some olive oil, salt, and lemon juice. That's it. This is just going to add some freshness and some vibrancy to the dish and a little bit of color at the end. And then you can set that aside. Risotto is still cooking. When there's like 20 to 15 minutes left for the risotto, which is about half the time it takes to cook the risotto, you throw the chicken in the oven. The oven should be preheated by now to finish the chicken. As we're finishing the risotto, it's very important. We do not season the risotto during this entire process until we're getting to the end, because the stock is going to be seasoning your risotto. If you season beforehand, you can over-season your risotto. So you want the rice to get to the point where it is creamy, but there's a slight bit of texture to it still. You could still identify the individual kernels. There's still texture to the risotto, but it's also creamy. Risotto texture should be able to hold shape when you put it on a plate, but if you shake the plate, it will fall. That's the proper texture for risotto. When we're getting almost done with the risotto, what we're going to do is we're going to take a nice heavy dollop of ricotta cheese, throw that in there. We're going to zest a lemon into it. We're going to squeeze the lemon juice out of that lemon into it as well. If you've got some Parmesan cheese, that'd be great too. Grate some of that in. And then you can taste it and then season with salt and pepper to taste at that point. Make sure you're keeping the texture correct for the risotto. If it starts to get too tight because it's on heat this entire time, you can just add a little bit of water because you've already seasoned at this point. The water's not going to bring down the seasoning, because if it's getting too tight, that means that it's reducing, which means the seasoning is intensifying. So adding a little bit of water is not going to be a problem. It'll just bring it back to where it should be, just to get the texture right. So after about 20 minutes of the chicken being in the oven, the chicken should be done. You can bring out the chicken, set that to the side, plate risotto. Preferably you'll have like a big bowl. I think that's best for something like this. Plate's fine though too.
Definitely a bowl risotto guy for sure.
Yeah. So nice heavy dollop of risotto in the middle of the plate. We've got our stock that's been reducing over to the side this entire time. By this time, that stock should be starting to get dark and should have reduced significantly. This is very easy sauce to do. Just call it chicken jus because that's essentially all it is. But we're going to take that reduced stock, mount butter into it, which mounting butter means to take cold butter and to emulsify it into the sauce over low heat, which will bring it some sheen, some texture. Season with salt and pepper if needed. That's the entire sauce. That's all you need. And that sauce will be enough for this. So, risotto in the middle of the plate. Take your piece of crispy chicken, put it right on top in the middle of that. Little herb salad on top of that. Take your sauce, spoon a little bit around the plate. We're done.
Oh, dude, I'm starving. There's no way you're not a good writer for one. The way you explained that was beautiful. I'm definitely happy. I took the approach of like I'm only going to win this through ease of accomplishing, and I still don't think I think I got my ass kicked still, but at least I took the right approach to trying to mitigate that damage. But oh man, I want some risotto.
I'm sorry
now.
I rambled for so long.
I loved it, dude. I was entranced. I was like you put some things on my radar. I was like, ooh, yeah, I should be doing that. And again, like it's no damn secret. You're a professional chef, brother. Like, phenomenal. Like those pictures, I'm like, damn, Wyatt is cooking over there.
I appreciate it, sir.
And our man Dark Side Dev was really he was real into this. Clip this part up.
I was seeing him hit up the chat.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Extra support. Well, I don't want to hold you too long. It's 10 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you so much for coming, talking DraftrPass. Disagreeing on some ADP values and then giving a delicious risotto recipe. Before we end the stream, anything that you want to plug for the people?
First, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. So I appreciate you. I appreciate our conversations on Twitter very much because I think that you're a sharp basketball player. So I enjoy getting to have these conversations with you. Anybody out there, you can follow me on Twitter at YB_FF. On my Twitter profile, you can find a link to all of my work that I do. That's basically the easiest way to support me if you'd like to. And I appreciate you if you do.
There might be some demand for a cookbook coming soon.
Maybe one day.
But all right, everybody, this is the Best Ball Bread Bank. I'm Big Loaf. This is Wyatt. I hope everybody had a fun time. We will see you in the draft streets, and I hope everyone has a good night. Peace.